At my mother-in-law's birthday gala, my wife's college ex-flame crashes the party uninvited. He points a finger in my face and tells me to get lost, calling me a good-for-nothing leech who doesn't deserve a seat at the table. My wife trembles with rage. My father-in-law hurls a steak knife that lands inches from his face. Me? I just pull out my phone and send a single text to the steward of my global financial empire. 15 minutes. I want him and his family erased from this world. Chapter 1. Ethan, can't you at least try? It's my mom's birthday party. Could you have worn something other than that? My wife, Chloe, whispered, her fingers fussing with the wrinkled collar of my faded t-shirt. Her touch was delicate and warm, carrying the faint, sweet scent of gardenias. I glanced down. As she leaned in, the neckline of her dress parted slightly, revealing a pale, perfect expanse of skin. An unwelcome jolt of heat coursed through me. I lazily reached up and captured her fidgeting hands in mine. Comfort is key, sweetheart. Chloe stamped her foot in frustration, but when she looked at my face, her anger melted away into a long, resigned sigh. Fine, you're lucky you're handsome. You could wear a burlap sack and still get away with it. I grinned, pulling her into my arms. She put up a token struggle before melting against my chest. Her cheeks flushed, a mix of shyness and adoration in her eyes. Stop it, my relatives are right outside. So what? We're legally married. I leaned in and gently kissed her earlobe. A shiver ran through her, her breath catching in her throat. This was my wife, Chloe Lynn. To the outside world, she was a poised and brilliant university professor. With me, she was as flustered and pure as a teenager on a first date. We've been married for a year. It happened in the most absurdly dystopian way possible, a federal mandate. That's right. In a desperate attempt to solve the nation's plummeting birth rate, the government had launched the Compatibility Initiative, a big data matchmaking system. Chloe and I were a 100% match. Refusing the pairing was illegal. And so, two perfect strangers met for the first time on the steps of City Hall and walked out with a marriage certificate. The Lynn family was a big deal in Denver, one of the city's most respected dynasties. Her father, Robert Lynn, was the chairman of a publicly traded corporation. And me? In their eyes, I was a 000, no parents, no job, no prospects. A guy with nothing to his name, but a pretty face. Everyone thought I'd hit the lottery, marrying into the Lynn family's fortune. What they didn't know was that I was just tired. Before I woke up in this world, I'd spent 25 years grinding in the rat race. I'd finally clawed my way up to a C-suite executive position at a major corporation when I went to sleep one night and woke up as an orphan in this parallel reality. Fortunately, I also inherited this world's version of me, the sole heir to the Sanctuary Trust, the world's #1 private financial entity, a clandestine organization so wealthy, so powerful, that a single whisper from me could trigger a global economic crisis. But I was burned out. I didn't want to hustle anymore. So I delegated all of the trust operations to my most capable inner circle and chose to just check out. My days were my own. I'd hit the gym, experiment with gourmet recipes, and dabble in home brewing. I was living the retirement dream I'd always wanted. Marrying Chloe was a complete accident, but it wasn't an unpleasant one. She was good. She was like a beam of light, warm but never blinding. And the way she looked at me, with that absolute, unconditional trust and affection, it made this cynical man who just wanted a quiet life feel the stirrings of something that felt dangerously like responsibility. Okay, that's enough. We should go out. Mom and Dad are waiting, Chloe said, pushing me away as she straightened her dress, her cheeks still a deep shade of crimson. I followed her out, strolling casually into the main hall. The cavernous living room of the Lynn family mansion was already packed with people, all relatives of the Lynn clan. The moment we entered, the lively chatter died for a split second before erupting into a flurry of hushed whispers. So that's Chloe's husband? He's definitely handsome, but I hear he's just a leech. Shoo, keep your voice down. They say he does nothing all day. Chloe supports him completely. The Lynns really drew the short straw with that one. Our daughter's match was a postdoc from Stanford. Now, that's a future. The voices were just loud enough for me to hear. I paid them no mind, walking straight to the catering table and popping a miniature cheesecake bite in my mouth. Not bad. Sweet, but not overpowering. A nice, creamy texture. Chloe, however, had thinner skin. The relatives' comments made her blush with embarrassment. She walked over and pinched my side hard. Is that all you ever think about? Food. I just winked at her. I am hungry. She was helpless against me. With a frustrated huff, she went to sit by her mother. At the head of the main table sat a stern-faced, middle-aged man who commanded respect without saying a word. My father-in-law, Robert Lynn. He shot me a complicated look, then let out a dismissive grunt and said nothing. I knew he couldn't stand me. How could a titan of industry, a man who had built an empire, tolerate a son-in-law with zero ambition? If it weren't for the federal mandate and his daughter's insistence, he probably would have thrown me out on the street months ago. I shrugged. As long as he didn't interfere with my quiet life, I couldn't care less what he thought of me. Chloe, dear, come sit, a gentle voice called. It was my mother-in-law, Helena. She wore a dark red, elegant gown, looking regal and refined, a polite smile fixed on her face. She, at least, seemed neutral about me. Her attitude was never cold, never warm, just maintaining a surface-level civility. The party began. One by one, relatives came forward to wish Helen a happy birthday, showering her with expensive gifts. When it was my turn, I pulled a small, hand-carved wooden box from my pocket and presented it to her. Happy birthday, Mom. I made this vitality pill myself. It's nothing special, just good for the skin. The moment the words left my mouth, the room went dead silent. Everyone stared at me as if I were a complete lunatic. A vitality pill? Does he think he's in some kind of fantasy movie? This is hilarious. It's probably a ball of dirt. The nerve of him to give that as a gift. Chloe's face went white. She tried to snatch the box back, but I held her hand firmly. Helen's smile was looking a little strained, but she accepted it out of politeness. Thank you, Ethan. That's very thoughtful of you. Only my father-in-law, Robert, gave me a long, hard look, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Just then, the grand doors to the hall were pushed open from the outside. A young man in a designer suit, his hair slicked back with too much gel, strode in. He was carrying a limited edition Hermes gift box, a smile plastered on his face that he clearly thought was charming. Aunt Helen, my apologies for being late. The second Chloe saw him, her expression soured. I raised an eyebrow, watching this uninvited guest with a growing sense of amusement. This should be interesting. The main event was about to begin. Chapter 2, the newcomer was Kevin Zhao, Chloe's college classmate and, in his own mind, her first love. Of course, that love was entirely one-sided. In Chloe's words, he was a persistent fly that just won't go away. Kevin's father was a minor real estate developer in Denver. With a comfortable fortune and a life free of obstacles, Kevin had grown up arrogant and condescending. He walked in and immediately ignored me, the actual husband, making a beeline for Chloe. Chloe, it's been too long. You're as beautiful as ever, he said, his gaze hot and invasive. Chloe instinctively leaned closer to me, frowning. Kevin, who invited you? You're not welcome here. The smile on Kevin's face froze for a second before he composed himself. He glanced at me, his eyes filled with undisguised contempt. So, Chloe, this is your government-assigned husband? Doesn't look like much. He looked me up and down like he was appraising used furniture. I hear you don't have a job? Just hang around the house all day? A man needs a career, not like some people who are content to just be kept. His comment drew smirks and entertained looks from the surrounding relatives. Before I could respond, my father-in-law's face hardened. Kevin, this is my wife's birthday party. If you're here to cause trouble, I suggest you leave. Kevin clearly didn't have much respect for Robert Lynn. He let out a short laugh. Mr. Lynn, don't get upset. I just feel bad for Chloe. She's brilliant. How could she end up married to a nobody? He paused, turning his gaze back to me with a look of patronizing charity. Listen, kid, I'll give you one chance. Get away from Chloe. Right now, I'll cut you a check big enough to set you up for life. You need to understand, some people are out of your league. I finally finished the last of my cheesecake bite and leisurely wiped my hand with a napkin. I lifted my eyes and looked at him. Are you done? Kevin frowned. He hadn't expected this reaction. A loser like me was supposed to grovel or maybe fly in a rage. This calm, almost bored attitude felt like punching a pillow. What's that supposed to mean? He asked coldly. It means I said, a small smirk playing on my lips, that you look like a clown. How dare you insult me? Kevin's face turned a shade of purple. He'd never been spoken to like that in his life. Insult you? No, I said, shaking my head. I'm merely stating a fact. You're asking for it. Kevin roared, swinging his fist directly at my face. A collective gasp went through the room. Chloe squeezed her eyes shut. I didn't even flinch. It wasn't that I couldn't react. It was that I knew someone else would. Thud. A dull impact. The pain I expected never came. I opened my eyes to see my father-in-law, Robert Lynn, on his feet, his hand locked around Kevin's fist in a grip of steel. Though he was over 50, Robert was still an imposing figure, radiating an aura of power. His eyes were like ice as he stared down Kevin. Who gave you the right to cause a scene in my house? He said, his voice dangerously low. Kevin's knuckles audibly creaked in his grip, and he winced in pain. Mr. Lynn, you... Get out. Robert shoved him violently. Kevin stumbled backward several steps before collapsing onto the floor in a heap. The entire room was silent. No one had expected my father-in-law, who had always treated me with disdain, to stand up for me, and in such a forceful way. Chloe was stunned. She looked from her father to me, her eyes filled with confusion. I gave her a reassuring smile, then turned my attention back to the pathetic heap on the floor that was Kevin Zhao. The game was just getting started. A truly skilled hunter always presents himself as the prey, patiently waiting for his target to walk right into the trap. It took Kevin a moment to scramble back to his feet, helped up by a few sympathetic relatives. His handsome face was flushed with a toxic mix of humiliation and rage. He didn't dare confront Robert Lynn, so he directed all his fury at me. Fine. Great. The esteemed Lynn family and their precious kept man. He pointed a trembling finger at me. You just wait. Don't think you're safe just because you're hiding behind them. I'm telling you, in less than 3 days, the Lynn Corporation will be bankrupt. Let's see how smug you are then. His threat sent a wave of alarm through the room. The Lynn relatives all wore expressions of genuine concern. While the Zhao family wasn't as powerful as the Lyns, they still had considerable influence in Denver. If they were to wage an all-out corporate war, the Lynn Corporation would suffer heavy losses, even if they won. Besides, there were rumors that Kevin had powerful connections. Kevin, are you insane? Chloe shouted, her voice a mixture of anger and fear. Insane? You drove me insane. Kevin screamed, completely losing his composure. Chloe, I waited for you for years. Why would you throw yourself away on a loser like him? What does he have that I don't? His words made Chloe's eyes well up with tears, but she stubbornly planted herself in front of me, spreading her arms as if to shield me. Kevin, don't you dare talk about him like that. He's my husband. Looking at her small but determined back, my heart softened in a way I hadn't expected. I reached out, gently pulled her behind me, and patted her hand. It's okay, sweetheart. Don't worry. Then, I looked at Kevin, my expression still one of detached laziness. Bankruptcy? You. My tone was flat, yet it dripped with an undeniable contempt. My attitude pushed Kevin over the edge. Still acting tough when you're about to be homeless. You have no idea who's backing me. Let me spell it out for you. Have you heard of the Jiang family from New York? Rachel Jiang, the heiress, is my cousin. I'm here in Denver representing their interests, scouting for investment opportunities. Offending me is the same as offending the Jiang family. Robert Lynn, if you get on your knees and beg for my forgiveness right now, maybe I'll reconsider. The Jiang family? At the mention of that name, even Robert Lynn's expression shifted. The Jiang family of New York was a true dynasty, one of the old money powerhouses that wielded immense influence. They weren't a regional company that the Lyns could ever hope to compete with. The relatives were now pale with fright. It's over. He's really stepped in it now. This is all Ethan's fault. Of all the people to provoke, he had to pick someone connected to the Jiangs. He's going to drag the entire Lynn family down with him. Suddenly, all the blame and criticism was directed at me. Chloe gripped my hand tightly, her palms slick with cold sweat. Ethan, maybe you should just apologize to him, she whispered, her voice trembling. I looked into her worried eyes and sighed internally. All right, playtime was over. Any more of this, and my sweet angel was going to have a panic attack. I took out my phone, and in front of everyone, I slowly typed out a message. The reply came almost instantly. A respectful and steady voice seemed to emanate from the screen in my mind. "Sir, your orders?" It was my most trusted subordinate, the man known only as the steward. I leaned back in my chair, getting comfortable, and typed my reply with a calm detachment. "Denver. A guy named Kevin Zhao. His father is some small-time real estate developer. Oh, and he claims his cousin is Rachel Jiang of the New York Jiangs. I don't want to hear that name again, and I don't want to see his family again. Be discreet." I sent the message and put my phone away. The entire exchange took less than 30 seconds. The room was deathly silent. Everyone was staring at me like I was a madman. Kevin burst out laughing, so hard he was almost in tears. "Ha ha! The performance. Keep it up. Who do you think you are? You think one text message is going to make the Jiang family disappear? Are you a god? A loser is a loser. All you could do is bluff." I ignored him, picked up my fork, and took a bite of braised short rib. A little overcooked. The meat was slightly tough. Robert Lynn frowned, looking like he wanted to say something but thought better of it. Only Chloe, despite her nervousness, looked at my calm profile with a new, inexplicable glimmer of trust in her eyes. That was her. No matter how ridiculous my actions were, her first instinct was always to believe in me. Such a foolish, wonderful girl. The seconds ticked by. Kevin was still ranting, boasting about his connections and power. About 5 minutes passed. His phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID and held up his phone smugly. "See this? It's my dad. He must have heard what's happening and is calling to back me up. You're all finished." He answered on speakerphone, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Hey, Dad, don't worry, I'm fine. I'm just about to teach these idiots a lesson they won't forget." Before he could finish, a frantic, enraged roar came from the other end of the line. "A lesson? You moron, you absolute idiot. Who did you cross? We're ruined. Everything is gone." Chapter for the arrogant smirk on Kevin Zhao's face vaporized. Dad, what are you talking about? What's gone?" "Our stock. Just now, a hostile takeover. In 1 second. 1 single second. It flatlined. Every bank is calling in our loans. Our credit lines are frozen. The company is heading for immediate liquidation." His father's voice was laced with pure terror and despair. "And that's not all. Every one of our construction projects has been shut down. The IRS, OSHA, the EPA, they're all swarming our offices. They're saying we have major violations. All of our properties have been seized." "No, that's impossible." Kevin's voice trembled, his face turning the color of ash. "Dad, call in some favors. We know Senator Williams." Senator Williams was just implicated in a massive corruption scandal 5 minutes ago. Everyone connected to our family is under federal investigation. No one can help us? You idiot. Tell me, who did you piss off? Who has this kind of power? Kevin stood there, phone in hand, completely stunned. His mouth hung open, his mind a total blank. The relatives were just as shocked, staring at each other, too afraid to even breathe. Their gazes shifted toward me, their expressions transforming from contempt and amusement to sheer, unadulterated terror. Just then, Kevin's phone rang again. This time, it was a woman's voice, choked with sobs. "Kevin, come home. Now. Your father. He just had a heart attack. They're taking him to the hospital. And there are federal agents here. They're seizing the house. No. No." Kevin's psyche shattered. His legs gave out, the phone clattering to the floor as he crumpled into a heap. He snapped his head up, staring at me as if he were seeing a ghost. At the man who just moments before had been calmly eating short ribs. The man he had called a loser and a leech. It was you. You did this." His voice was a broken whisper. I set down my fork and dabbed my mouth with a linen napkin. I looked down at him, my expression like that of a scientist observing an insect. "I gave you a chance. You just didn't know what to do with it." My voice was quiet, but each word landed like a sledgehammer blow to Kevin's soul. "No, it's not possible. Who are you? Who the hell are you?" he shrieked, his mind teetering on the brink of collapse. I didn't have to answer him. A sharp, female voice did it for me. "Kevin, you incompetent, blundering fool." A woman in a Chanel power suit, her face a mask of cold fury, strode into the hall. Her makeup was flawless, her aura glacial. Two large men in black suits followed closely behind her. Seeing her, Kevin reacted as if she were a lifeline, scrambling across the floor toward her. "Cousin, Rachel, help me. Please help our family." The newcomer was, of course, the New York heiress, Rachel Jiang. And, technically, my ex-fiancée. Years ago, our families had a verbal agreement, sort of old-fashioned betrothal. Then I decided to drop out of the race. To the Jiang family, this was an unforgivable act of self-destruction. Rachel herself had publicly disavowed any connection to me, declaring that a loser like me wasn't even fit to shine her shoes. Now, this proud heiress was looking at me with an incredibly complex expression. There was shock, confusion, but overriding it all was the raw anger of someone who has been profoundly deceived. She completely ignored the pathetic cousin clinging to her leg and walked directly to me. "Ethan, was this your doing?" Her voice was ice, laced with accusation. I barely lifted my gaze. "It was—" Rachel's chest heaved. She stared at me, searching my face for a hint of something, anything. "Why? You could have." "Could have what?" I cut her off, a scornful smile touching my lips. "Could have stood here and let your moron cousin call me a loser to my face? Or maybe I should have just continued to endure the condescending sneers from your entire family." Rachel was speechless. "Ms. Jiang," I said, rising to my feet and looking down on her. "A little self-awareness goes a long way. There are circles you don't get to enter just because you want to, and there are forces in this world that are beyond your comprehension. Go back and tell your grandfather that out of respect for the insignificant friendship our families once shared, I only touched the Zhaos this time. If there's a next time, I won't hesitate to let New York find itself with a new leading family. My word is my bond, the ultimate calling card of the powerful." The statement hit Rachel like a bolt of lightning. Her face went pale, her body trembling uncontrollably. She finally understood what her entire family had thrown away. The man they had dismissed as trash was, in fact, a slumbering dragon. A dragon who, tired of ruling the skies, had decided to rest in the shallows, only to be mistaken for a common snake by a bunch of ignorant fish. How laughable! How pathetic! Chapter 5. Rachel Jiang left in a daze, not even sparing a final glance for her cousin, who was still a sobbing mess on the floor. A smart woman knows when to cut her losses. Kevin Zhao was no longer a chess piece. He was a liability. The hall was unnervingly quiet. All the relatives kept their heads down, avoiding my gaze, too scared to utter a word. The range of expressions on their faces was a sight to behold. Shock, fear, sycophantic awe, deep regret. The few who had been the loudest with their insults now looked like they wanted the floor to swallow them whole. I could only imagine the hurricane raging in their minds. The man they had written off as a worthless leech had just obliterated a family with a single text message. He was a force that even the powerful Jiang family of New York had to bow to. That kind of cognitive dissonance was enough to shatter their entire worldview. And that was exactly what I wanted. I enjoyed watching them, these clowns who had seen nothing of the real world. I looked forward to the day they learned the full truth and experienced the sweet symphony of their complete and utter despair. I turned to my parents-in-law. My mother-in-law, Helen, was completely frozen, the small wooden box containing the vitality pill now feeling like a hot coal in her hand. She looked at me as if I were a stranger, her eyes filled with awe and a healthy dose of fear. But my father-in-law, Robert Lin, was remarkably calm. He just looked at me, a long, deep look before letting out a heavy sigh and raising his glass of whiskey. "Ethan, kulme, have a drink with me." His form of address had shifted. It was no longer the clipped, formal name, but something warmer. I walked over and sat down beside him. Robert poured me a generous glass of what looked like a 25-year-old single malt scotch. He raised his glass. "It seems I've misjudged you." He downed the entire glass in one go. I raised my own and did the same. The fiery liquid burned a pleasant trail down my throat. I set my glass down and looked at him. "You're not angry with me, sir?" Robert shook his head, a wry smile on his face. "Angry? What right do I have to be angry? I should be thanking you. Thanking you for seeing something in our Chloe. thanking you for being willing to endure the judgment of us ordinary mortals. He spoke with genuine sincerity. I was surprised. I had always thought of him as just a sharp businessman. I never realized he saw things so clearly. To be honest, I suspected from the beginning that you weren't who you seemed, Robert said, pouring himself another glass. The day you and Chloe got married, I had my people run a background check on you. They came back with nothing. Your file was a blank slate, perfectly clean. In this digital age, for a person's past to be so thoroughly erased, it can only mean one thing. He looked me straight in the eye. You have an organization behind you, a power so vast it's beyond imagination. I don't know why you chose to step back, to marry into our family, but I know that what you feel for Chloe is real. A man who is willing to swallow his pride and sacrifice his dignity for a woman isn't a loser. That's a man who is deeply in love. Today, that idiot Kevin Zhao crossed a line. Your response was unexpected, but in hindsight, it was perfectly logical. A dragon resting in the shallows doesn't mean it has lost its claws. It just means it can't be bothered to move. I listened quietly, saying nothing. I had to admit, I had underestimated my father-in-law. He wasn't just a successful entrepreneur. He was a wise man who understood human nature. Aren't you afraid? I asked. Afraid? Robert laughed, a hearty, confident sound. I've been navigating the cutthroat world of business my entire life. I've seen it all. I'm not afraid of you being too powerful. My only fear was that you wouldn't be good to Chloe. Now I have no more worries. He clapped me on the shoulder, his eyes filled with genuine approval and admiration. From now on, the Lin family has your back. You want a quiet life? You've got it. If anyone dares to disturb you, they'll have to go through me first. I looked at him, and a warmth spread through my chest. So this is what it felt like to have someone's unconditional trust and support. It wasn't bad. Just then, Chloe, who had been silent this whole time, wrapped her arms around me from behind. Her body was trembling slightly. I felt a warm drop land on my back. She was crying. I turned around and pulled her into my arms. She buried her face in my chest, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She was crying like a lost child. What's wrong? I asked softly, stroking her hair. She didn't answer, just shook her head and clung to me even tighter. I knew she had been through an emotional roller coaster tonight. First, she was terrified for me. Then she witnessed a display of power that defied belief. Her mind must have been a chaotic mess. I didn't press her, just held her quietly, letting her release all the pent-up emotions. The few remaining relatives had long since made their excuses and scurried away. The vast hall was empty, save for our family of four. My father and mother-in-law exchanged a look, then silently stood up and left, giving us our space. After a long while, Chloe's sobs finally subsided. She looked up, her beautiful eyes red and swollen. She looked like a little bunny who'd had its feelings hurt. Ethan, who are you? She asked, her voice thick with emotion. The question she had been holding back finally came out. I looked at her, pausing before I answered. I was trying to figure out how to explain all of this to her. Should I tell her I was the heir to the world's largest financial empire? That I possessed enough wealth and power to buy several small countries? No, that would scare her. It would create a chasm between us. I just wanted her to be my sweet, carefree angel, not the wife of a magnate. An idea came to me. I cupped her face in my hands, gently wiping away the tear stains with my thumbs. I'm me, I said, looking directly into her eyes. I'm your legally mandated husband, Ethan Vance. But, Chew, I pressed a finger to her lips. Sweetheart, some things are better left unknown. All you need to know is this. From this day forward, no one will ever be able to bully you again. If anyone dares to cause you the slightest bit of unhappiness, I will make them, and their entire family, disappear from this world. My voice was calm, but the words held an absolute, unreasonable power. Chloe stared at me, dumbfounded. In my eyes, she saw a seriousness and resolve she had never seen before. Her heart began to beat wildly against her ribs. The man in front of her was still the same lazy, affectionate guy who loved to stick to her side and tease her. But now there was something else about him, something magnetic, an aura of absolute confidence and control. That woman, Rachel Jiang, was what she said true. Was she Ex-fiancé, she asked, biting her lip. That was the question she really cared about. A woman's intuition is a powerful thing. It was just an old family arrangement. I never agreed to it. I said honestly, in my heart, my wife has only ever been you. Instantly, Chloe's eyes lit up, like a switch had been flipped, turning on a pair of brilliant stars. All the fear and uncertainty vanished from her face, replaced by pure, unadulterated joy. She stood on her toes and gave me a quick, sweet kiss on the lips. It was as light as a butterfly's wings. Then she buried her face in my chest, too shy to look at me. Okay, I believe you. I chuckled. This silly girl was always so easy to please. I held her, feeling the soft warmth of her body, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. A profound sense of peace settled over me. Maybe this was what having a home felt like. A place where I could let down all my guards and just be. People spend their lives chasing a few simple things: money, companionship, and peace of mind. Somehow, I seem to have found them all. Chapter 7: The storm from the birthday party passed quickly. The Zhao family was wiped from the map in Denver. I never bothered to find out what happened to Kevin. The fate of an aunt wasn't worth a second of my time. The Zhang family from New York sent an obscenely expensive gift basket with a heartfelt letter of apology, promising that nothing of the sort would ever happen again. I heard through the grapevine that Rachel's grandfather had forced her to kneel in the family chapel for 3 days and stripped her of all her positions in the family company. All of this was reported to me by the steward. I listened, gave a simple and told him to continue managing the trust affairs. My life returned to its peaceful rhythm. I'd wake up whenever I wanted, hit the gym, and then spend the afternoon trying out new recipes to cook for my lovely wife. The only real difference was the attitude of the Lin family, which had done a complete 180. My father-in-law, Robert, now treated me better than his own son. He even gave me a cushy vice president position at his company. The title was a sham. He called it keeping my son-in-law busy, but really it was just a way to funnel money to me without my having to lift a finger. I, of course, accepted graciously. Who was I to turn down free money? And so, I became the most relaxed VP in the history of the Lin Corporation. I'd show up just long enough to clock in, then spend the day in my office drinking tea, reading the news, and playing video games. My office, specially designed by my father-in-law, was outfitted with a top-of-the-line massage chair, the latest gaming console, and an entire wet bar. I even set up a small fermentation station in the corner to experiment with brewing my own mead and cider. Everyone in the company knew the new VP was the chairman's son-in-law who got the job through connections, but no one dared say a word. The story of what happened at the birthday party had spread like wildfire. In their eyes, I was now some mysterious, untouchable powerhouse. My quiet presence became a legend. Hashtag, did VP Vance get out of bed today, even became a trending topic on the company's internal Slack channels. Once, the hashtag somehow leaked and went viral on Twitter, causing the Lin Corporation stock to surge for no apparent reason. My father-in-law called to congratulate me, calling me the company's good luck charm. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This, I supposed, was the pinnacle of winning by doing nothing. My wife, Chloe, also changed in subtle ways. She became even clingier than before. It used to be that she just enjoyed being around me. Now, she was practically glued to me whenever she had a spare moment. She developed a particular fondness for my abs. Just checking on your fitness progress, she'd say with a mischievous grin. One afternoon, I was in my office, reading a rare book on ancient brewing techniques. Chloe walked in. She was wearing a simple white sundress, her long hair flowing over her shoulders. She looked breathtakingly pure. Well, look at the busy executive, she teased. I put down my book and opened my arms. Like a little cat, she immediately curled up on my lap, wrapping her arms around my neck. Just researching how to brew the most delicious fruit wine for my favorite girl, I said, pinching her nose playfully. Really? Her eyes lit up. Of course. I want peach wine. Done. And plum wine. You got it. And also, whatever you want, you get, I said, smiling at her. She beamed and planted a happy kiss on my cheek. Then, her hand started its mischievous journey, slipping under my t-shirt to trace the lines of my stomach. Getting firmer, she murmured like a little hooligan, sighing with satisfaction. Her touch sent fire through my veins, my breathing growing heavy. This little demon, always playing with fire. I caught her wandering hand, my voice turning husky. Sweetheart, you shouldn't start things you can't finish. She looked up at me, her big, innocent eyes wide. I'm not starting anything, but I could see the playful glint she couldn't hide. I let out a low growl and, in one smooth motion, flipped her onto the sofa, pinning her beneath me. I believe it's time to teach you the consequences of playing with fire. The blinds in the office were, at some point, drawn shut. The room filled with a warm, hazy light. Love and good food are two of life's greatest pleasures. I had both, and I was the luckiest man alive. Chapter 8. After the night of the birthday party, my relationship with Chloe went into hyperdrive. She had moved from the polite respect of an arranged marriage to curiosity and tentative affection, and now to full-blown adoration and fascination. She came up with all sorts of pet names for me, from my Ethan to Mr. Vance, and a few others that were far too embarrassing to repeat, reserved only for when we were alone. She would act like a little girl, seeking my praise. She would get jealous if I so much as glanced at another woman, but her jealousy never turned into arguments. Instead, she would just become even more affectionate, possessively leaving her mark on me, like a small, faint hickey on my neck. When I went to the office the next day, everyone who saw it would give me a knowing, conspiratorial smile, and I loved every second of it. She also started secretly memorizing all my preferences. Knowing I preferred home-cooked meals, this woman who had never so much as boiled water in her life started learning to cook. Her first attempt at sweet and sour ribs was a disaster. Way too much sugar, not nearly enough vinegar. But I ate every last bite and told her, with complete sincerity, this is the best meal I've ever had. She lit up like a child who had just been given a mountain of candy. We also got a cat, a beautiful and clingy rag doll, much like its owner. We named him Machi. Funnily enough, Machi seemed to have his own ideas about our relationship. He would often take his favorite toy mouse, carry it over to Chloe's side of the bed, drop it on her pillow, and then curl up contentedly at the foot of the bed. It was as if he were presenting his own dowry. One Saturday, Chloe and I were curled up on the couch watching a movie. It was an old art house film, slow-paced with a warm, nostalgic color palette. Machi was purring on my lap, fast asleep. Chloe was leaning against my shoulder, a bowl of popcorn in her lap. Ethan, she said suddenly, we've never really been on a proper date. I paused. She was right. We had gone from strangers to spouses in less than a day. We had skipped straight to the comfortable domesticity of a long-married couple. We had missed all the romantic, getting-to-know-you moments that other couples have. A pang of guilt hit me. I had been a pretty lousy husband in that regard. I was so focused on my own quiet life that I had forgotten she was still a young woman who dreamed of romance. I'm sorry, I said quietly. Chloe shook her head, feeding me a piece of popcorn. I'm not blaming you. I just feel like it's a small regret. She paused, then looked up at me, her eyes sparkling. So, Mr. Vance, would you be willing to take me on a date? Looking into those hopeful eyes, there was no way I could say no. Of course, I said, kissing her forehead. Your wish is my command, Your Majesty. She giggled. Then let's go to the amusement park. I haven't been in forever. Deal. The next day, I drove my unassuming sedan with Chloe to Ellich Gardens, Denver's biggest amusement park. To avoid causing a scene, we both wore hats and face masks. Chloe was like a bird let out of its cage, dragging me onto every single thrill ride. The roller coasters, the pendulum swings, the free fall towers. She screamed her lungs out the entire time, her face alight with pure joy. I, on the other hand, remained completely expressionless. It wasn't that I was brave. It was just that the thrill of these rides paled in comparison to watching a billion-dollar experimental rocket from one of my R&D divisions explode on the launch pad. As the day ended, Chloe insisted we ride the Ferris wheel. She told me about the legend. A couple who kisses at the very top will stay together forever. I looked at her earnest, hopeful face and found it both cute and endearing. As our car slowly climbed, the Denver skyline unfolded beneath us. The setting sun bathed the entire city in a beautiful golden light. It was a stunning view, but it was nothing compared to the woman sitting beside me. When our car reached the apex, Chloe closed her eyes and tilted her face up slightly, like a sleeping princess waiting for her prince's kiss. I watched her eyelashes tremble, her lips glistening in the fading light. My throat went dry. I leaned in, moving closer. Just as our lips were about to touch, bang! A loud, jarring noise. Our entire car shook violently. Chloe let out a terrified scream and threw herself into my arms. I instinctively wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight, my eyes turning to ice. Trouble. The door to our car had been pried open from the outside. Several men in black ski masks, brandishing knives, stood in the doorway. The man in the lead fixed his cold, hard eyes on me. Ethan Vance. Someone paid a lot of money for your life. Chapter 9, another one of these boring, cliché scenarios. I frowned, a flicker of annoyance crossing my face. In my arms, Chloe was trembling, her face pale with terror. I gently rubbed her back, whispering, "It's okay. I've got you." My voice seemed to steady her. Her grip on my shirt loosened slightly. I looked up at the uninvited guests. From their stance and the way they held their knives, they were professionals, just not very good ones. To take a contract without even knowing who the target really was. It seemed the steward needed to clean house in the global assassination market. "Who sent you?" I asked, my voice flat. The leader sneered. "Dead men don't need to know." With that, he lunged, slashing his knife toward me. He was fast, the angle of his attack vicious and precise. A normal person would have had no chance. But to me, he was moving in slow motion. Still holding Chloe, I shifted my body just enough to evade the blade. At the same time, my foot shot out, connecting perfectly with his wrist. Crack! A sickening crunch of bone. The man screamed as the knife clattered to the floor. His arm was now bent at an unnatural angle. Seeing this, the other assassin's eyes widened. They exchanged a look and charged at me in unison. I moved with Chloe in my arms, a fluid dance within the confines of the small cabin. Every one of their attacks missed by a hair's breadth, and every one of my counterattacks landed with brutal precision on their weakest points, their joints. Crack! Snap! The sound of breaking bones filled the small space. In less than a minute, all of the assassins were on the floor, clutching shattered arms and legs, writhing in agony. Throughout the entire ordeal, I hadn't let a single one of them even touch a speck of dust on Chloe's dress. This was the power of absolute strength. In the face of it, all plots and schemes are nothing more than paper tigers. Chloe was speechless. Her mouth was agape as she stared at me, her expression one of utter disbelief, as if she were looking at a superhero. She knew I was capable, but she had never imagined this. This was beyond her understanding of what a human being could do. I smiled at her and ruffled her hair. "You scared?" She shook her head, then immediately nodded vigorously. Her dazed, adorable expression made me want to kiss her even more. I leaned in, about to finish what we had started at the peak. Suddenly, my expression changed. A powerful sense of danger washed over me. It was a feeling I only got when facing an opponent on my own level. My head snapped up, and I looked down toward the ground. There, standing among the panicking crowd, was a man in a black trench coat, slowly raising a silver pistol. The barrel was pointed directly at us. A sniper, and a world-class one at that. There was no time to think. I grabbed Chloe and threw us both against the far side of the cabin. Thwomp! At that exact moment, the muffled sound of a high-caliber rifle shot echoed. A bullet tore through the space where I had been standing, shattering the plexiglass and leaving a terrifying hole. If I had been a tenth of a second slower, that bullet would have gone through my head. Chloe let out a short, sharp cry, clinging to me for dear life. My face was a mask of cold fury. For someone to be able to deploy an asset of this caliber against me, this was more complicated than I thought. "Hold on tight," I yelled to Chloe. Then, holding her in my arms, I leaped out of the open door. We were hundreds of feet in the air. Below us was nothing but concrete. A fall from this height meant certain death. Chloe squeezed her eyes shut and let out a scream of pure terror. But I was completely calm. As we plummeted, I reached out and caught a steel support beam of the Ferris wheel. The jarring impact sent a shockwave through my arm, my muscles screaming in protest. I felt the skin in the palm of my hand tear open, warm blood beginning to flow. But I didn't let go. Like an agile ape, I moved from one beam to another, using our momentum to swing us safely downward through the complex steel lattice. The wind roared in my ears. Below, the screams of the crowd were a chaotic symphony of fear. Ping! Another shot rang out. A bullet ricocheted off a steel beam I had just left, sending a shower of sparks into the air. The sniper was still down there, hunting us. My eyes went cold. It was clear that unless I dealt with him, we weren't getting out of here. I found a relatively sheltered spot among the beams and held Chloe close. Sweetheart, cover your ears, close your eyes, and no matter what you hear, don't look. My voice was devoid of all emotion. Though terrified, Chloe nodded and did as I said. She buried her face in my chest, her hands clamped tightly over her ears. I took a deep breath. Then I opened my mouth and emitted a high-frequency sound wave, imperceptible to the human ear. Steward, code red. Lock onto my position. Eliminate the rat on the ground. And find out who's behind this. I want them to wish they had never been born. Chapter 10, My Command, transmitted via a subsonic communicator accessible only to the innermost circle of the Sanctuary Trust, reached its destination thousands of miles away in an instant. Almost simultaneously with my words, the piercing wail of air raid sirens erupted over the amusement park. Seconds later, a dozen military-grade assault helicopters swarmed in from all directions. The powerful downdraft from their rotors kicked up a whirlwind, sending panicked parkgoers stumbling. From the helicopters, teams of black-clad, fully armed soldiers descended on fast ropes. They moved with the chilling efficiency of a veteran special ops unit, securing the entire perimeter in moments. The crowd, thinking they were in the middle of a terrorist attack, dropped to the ground, hands over their heads. The sniper, hidden amongst them, finally saw his expression change. He realized he hadn't just kicked a hornet's nest. He had kicked a dragon. He tried to run. It was too late. 3 helicopters formed a tight triangle, their spotlights pinning him in place. The menacing barrels of their Vulcan cannons were trained directly on him. The slightest wrong move, and he would be turned into red mist. In utter despair, he dropped his weapon and raised his hands high in the air. Soldiers swarmed him, slamming him to the ground and cuffing him. The threat was neutralized. I leaped down from the steel frame, Chloe still in my arms, and landed softly on the ground. I took off my jacket and draped it over her head, shielding her from the chaos as I strode through the terrified crowd and into a black Rolls-Royce that had appeared silently at the curb. The heavy door closed, shutting out the world. Inside, an old man in a flawless tuxedo and white gloves, his silver hair combed perfectly, was waiting respectfully. It was my most trusted confidant, the steward. "Sir, you are injured," he said, his gaze falling on my bleeding hand. His eyes held a flicker of pain and self-reproach. "It's nothing," I said dismissively. "My apologies for this lapse, sir. I have failed in my duty to protect you and the missus," the steward said, bowing his head. "It wasn't your fault. I was the one who got careless." I looked at Chloe, who was still trembling in my arms, and my expression softened. I gently removed the jacket from her head. She slowly opened her eyes. Seeing the unfamiliar luxury of the car and the strange old man, she tensed with fear. "Ethan, where are we? Who are they?" "It's okay," I said, taking her hand and giving her a reassuring smile. "They're my colleagues." "Colleagues?" Chloe clearly didn't buy it. What kind of company had armed assault helicopters on standby? "That's right. Colleagues," I said, my face a mask of sincerity. "I'm not actually unemployed. I have a very special job. Think of it as a secret agent for a government agency. Today was all part of a training exercise. Those assassins, the sniper, they were all actors from my unit. It was a drill to test my response time. I started weaving the most ridiculous lie with a perfectly straight face. Chloe stared at me, her mind clearly struggling to process the information. A secret agent. Yes, I nodded, my expression deadly serious. My identity is classified top secret, which is why I could never tell you. All you need to know is that I'm safe, and we are both safe now. Looking into my earnest and completely fabricated expression, Chloe's racing heart finally began to slow. While parts of the story seemed outlandish, she chose to believe me, because I was her husband. She leaned against me, murmuring, "Well, You have to promise me you'll be careful on your missions. I'll, I'll be waiting for you at home. Seeing the genuine worry in her eyes melted my heart. I leaned down and kissed her. This wasn't a light, teasing kiss. It was deep and passionate, filled with the relief of a near miss and a love that ran bone deep. When we finally broke apart, Chloe was breathless, her face flushed as she rested her head on my chest. I stroked her long hair, watching the city lights blur past the window. But as I looked out, my eyes grew cold. They dared to touch my woman. I don't care who you are. I don't care who is backing you. I will make you understand the true meaning of despair. It was time for the world to be reminded of the terror that the Sanctuary Trust could unleash.